It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in.
Okay. Hello, everybody, Debrina especially, and welcome to my presentation. My name is Deandra McDonald. I am a friend of Sam's. We met a few years ago, like 2 years ago now, in terms of when he interviewed me for his podcast for the Black Real Estate Dialogue. We've kept in contact since. I am a teacher turned real estate investor. I started out with house hacking, and I want to focus a lot on that today. But what I want to explain is not so much how to house hack, because I think Sam does a great job explaining that. We all have courses about house hacking. I want to show you how I was able to like stack my house hacks almost, how I was able to use the house hacks and grow my portfolio from that, because they all really stems from those first two purchases. So a little background about me. I grew up in Harlem. That's my husband. I grew up in Harlem and I learned to like work. My dad is Jamaican, my mom is Southern, and that means you work hard, you get things. If you don't work hard, you don't get stuff, right? I went to college, but debt is what stopped me from going to grad school. I probably took about $35,000 to go to undergrad, and that's weirdly, it doesn't feel like it's that much money, right? Compared to what I've heard some other people have to take out. But I felt overwhelmed by that debt. And I did not want to go to grad school and commit to more and more schooling until I knew for sure what I wanted. So I kind of bopped around from jobs a little bit, but I started teaching biology when I was 24, and I was able to retire from teaching. So about 4 years later. So with real estate, I was able to not only dig myself out of that debt hole, but also leave my job fully so I can focus on my investments. So what I'm going to do is break down how my rental portfolio grew, so you can see both the speed and how they related to each other. So these are my teacher pictures, right, for my first 3 years of teaching. A little earlier is when I graduated from UVA, my first salary job. And this picture here, circled, is when I bought my first house. That was in 2015. And that was my very first house hack. I found this picture somewhere. It was a 2-bedroom townhouse. I bought it for $85,000. The payment was $525. That was my mortgage payment. That included principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And it was a 2-bedroom townhouse. Like I said, I lived in one room, my roommate lived in the other, and he paid me $600 a month. So while I lived there, I was able to live rent-free. That was my very first experience with living rent-free with house hacking. I didn't have that word back then, but I have it now. And afterwards, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. So since then, I have not paid for housing because of this experience. And I knew that moving forward, if I was going to buy a bigger house, if I was going to buy a different house, I have to have the houses pay for themselves. Either this very first house has to help me with the extra mortgage, with the extra rent thrown off from it, or I have to give roommates to the next one. But I really liked, because I didn't make very much, right? When I bought this house, I was making $28,000 a year. When I became a teacher, I was making $48,000 a year, which is still like not a lot of money. But this allowed me to wipe out one massive debt and help with my friend, which is kind of cool. So in 2015, I bought one single family house. That's it. I had to come up with $4,000. House was bought, living rent free. And then in 2016, I bought the house next door. On the other side, that was the first house I bought. This was the house next door. It was owned by 2 out-of-state owners. And I'm not gonna lie, every time there was an issue, I would call them and I'd be like, this is terrible. Y'all have to do better. I can't believe you guys are doing this. This is the worst. So eventually they were like, we're ready to sell. And I was like, I'll buy it. I'll buy it from you if you're selling. I live next door. This would be very useful. But this one was a lot more expensive because it was a 3-bedroom. They had converted one of the rooms downstairs to it and added a bathroom. So instead of 85, it was 140. And this house I bought with my husband. So we were engaged at this point. We were fiancés when we bought this property together. But the mortgage was $890, and we had a roommate. We had a roommate living with us for $600 a month. And I know that freaks out a lot of people. A lot of people definitely don't want to live with roommates necessarily themselves, but also don't think they should live with roommates if they have a significant other. And I hear you, but we didn't want to pay for housing. So we didn't want to pay for housing, and we had a wedding coming up. And so between those two things, we were like, look, for the next year, we have to sacrifice. Now, the rent was $600. The mortgage was $890. So there was still a $290 overage, right? But that was paid by the rent coming from this property. So when I left this property, even though the mortgage was $525, I was able to get, I think at that point, maybe was getting $1,400 for it for rent. So that's an additional $700-800. Between that and this new rent, again, we were living rent free. So all of our extra money went to saving for our wedding, which is what that was the goal. We got to live rent free and save for the wedding of our dreams and the honeymoon of our dreams. And that's what this year looked like. So in 2016, I bought one single family property. And so now I have a total of 2 units and they are next door to each other. Still house hacking, still with the roommate. 2017 though, we got married, right? I was addicted and I bought my first multifamily. This is when things started to pick up pace a little bit. This is my first duplex. Each side is 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths. I bought it for $277,000. The payment, we're getting expensive, right? The payment was $1,800 a month. And each side rented for $1,400. So what happened here, right? Now we have these 2 properties. This is throwing off a few $100s a month. This is throwing off a few $100s a month. We lived in the A side. We lived in the A side. We rented out the B side for $1,400. Then our mortgage was $400. Then we had a few, I need to admit. Then we had a few discussions about if we should have a roommate or not. We decided we should not have a roommate. We thought, now we're married. It is time for us to just have to accept that we won't be making as much money as we maybe wanted to, but we were still living for free. Because remember, the mortgage is $1,800. One side is paying $1,400. And the other 2 homes we have are throwing off $400 a month, more than $400 a month. So again, we are living a great life. We're living rent free. I was able to up my number of rentals by 2. Still house hacking. Now this is where things started to shift. For 3 years, I house hacked. For 3 years, I either lived with roommates or I lived in a multifamily housing complex in order to pay for my living because I wanted to keep as much money in my pocket. I was able to do this because I kept my job. I wasn't overextended. I had Section 8 rentals or tenants, so they weren't going anywhere. It was a great, still is. We have all those rentals still. Great time. But I needed to scale because I was starting to get to a point where it's like, okay, I can't manage this much debt on my personal credit. And I would like to have more money. And I don't want to have to live in the properties every year anymore. That's when I kind of switched gears from house hacking to seller financing. So this is a condo I bought in 2018. I bought it for $102,000. And seller financing, for those of you who don't know, is when the seller carries the note for you. So the person who owned this property owns it outright. So instead of getting a loan from the bank, I got a loan from him, right? I gave him, I think, $20,000 down. And he carried a note for me, interest only, which is why the payment is so low. The payment's only $350 a month because I only had an interest only payment. And I Airbnb'd that condo, and that brought in about $2K a month. That was the beauty of that place. And I want to say, I forgot to mention the down payment. Let me go back. The down payment for this property and the down payment for this property both came from my very first property. Both came from this guy, because I got a HELOC on it. So I got a $50,000 HELOC on it a few years later, which paid for the down payment for my multifamily and it paid for the down payment for my condo. I was able to stack using my house hacks. They don't just disappear. It was not only I get to live rent free when I was there, I then got to profit from the rents when I left. And thirdly, I got to touch the appreciation, the equity, and use it to buy more properties. So in 2018, again, one single family, and now I'm at a total of 5. This is where things start to get fun. This is about scaling. I was ready to scale and get a lot bigger, but again, we're using the house hacks. So this is my first apartment building I bought. This is an old picture. Geez, we've done so much since then. And I paid $160,000 for this property. The payment is $990 a month. and the rent is about $325 per unit. So the 3 units, or there's 10 units and there's an 11th commercial space, brings in about $3,500 a month. And the payment is only $990. So I get to keep about $1,500 to $2,000 a month, which really jumped both my income, and I didn't have to move there. That was the big selling point with me and my husband, that this is the point when we finally finished house hacking. But our house hacks pay for our housing, and now this helps as well. So that year, my portfolio grew again. So it was an 11-unit multifamily. I sold that condo. I flipped that condo here that I got from the house hack. I flipped it, made about $15,000, and that gave me enough of the down payment for my apartment building. And I didn't add the 2020 because it was still relatively new, but last year, this apartment building, there's another building behind this one. Boop. I bought that building last year. So now we're at like 28, 29 rentals because I bought another apartment building using the profits from the original house hacks. So what do I look for a property now? Actually, let me go back. I want to say first what I looked for in a property before I started house hacking, before I started buying commercial. What I looked for in a property when I was house hacking was, does it have 2 bedrooms and is it under budget? That was it. I was just like, I need to find a property where I can live rent free. I want to find a property that my roommates or the people next door will pay the mortgage for me, because I do not want to have to pay rent. Things have changed slightly now that I'm buying commercially, and now that my house hacks have afforded me that opportunity. So I want to share what I look for in a property now. I look for a $200,000 maximum purchase price. That's my max budget. That helps me get my niche market that I'm targeting, inexpensive multifamily properties. It keeps my mortgage low and consistent and keeps my down payment accessible. I will say, y'all, that this has been super helpful during Corona, right? That the payment for my building is $1,000. So if one person doesn't pay, I'm not stressed out. If one person doesn't pay, I'm not underwater, compared to if I had an $900,000 house. Sorry, I saw stuff in the chat, trying to get out of this. I apologize, guys. Okay, I am looking for $1,500 a month in profit. That's what I'm looking for my properties. I want to get my money back in less than 2 years, which is aggressive. And I understand that, but I'm trying to get my money back as soon as I possibly can. It also gives me a large room for error or stressors, including Corona, including COVID, including mass layoffs, including a lot of people not responding. It gives me a lot of freedom. And that is important to me, because I can be the good landlord. I can be a great landlord because I have enough money coming in to fix issues. And 40% return on investment, right? Because I'm getting so much money back from what I put in. I'm also looking to be near major highways. It's easy for tenants to commute to their city wherever they're going for work. It's easy for me to commute if I'm managing. The 2 properties of the 2 buildings I have are on the main highway by my house. So once I get on that highway, it takes me 10 minutes to get to that highway. I take it straight there. And it also means that snow, electric, and city maintenance are present, right? If we're too deep in the woods, the city is not coming to plow. But if you're on a major highway, they're plowing. They're picking up grass, they're picking up trash. I can rely on those things. I don't invest in major cities, right? New York, Baltimore, Richmond, but I do invest in secondary cities. So cities around the major ones. Again, between that and the highways, tenants can get where they need to get in 35 minutes, but I get much cheaper price ranges because I'm not in the heart of the city. And lastly, I like simple construction. I want it to be as much of a box as possible. I don't want cute archways. I don't want crown molding places. I need it to be simple so I can fix things if they go wrong, and there's very little that can go wrong. So here are those 5 things that I currently look for.
It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in.